Okay, we are officially at 8:30. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. A couple important quick announcements. They're going to read them, but I'll just have to go over them a couple more times. Please be mindful, no smoking on the property. That's the only rule the church asks us to do. They give us the use of this $10 million facility. They say, please don't smoke on it. And of course, please don't drink on it. You know, they found a couple bottles. I understand that people have to drink, and but be mindful of the church and be respectful of their property. You know, they found a couple empty bottles here and there, some half full, and that really pisses off an alcoholic. You know, just leave full ones there, or just take the empties with you. That's all we request, right? Let's have some fun tonight. Be mindful too. This group provides a lot of services. We provide free big books for people. We record our speakers, give them free CDs, and plus all the food. And there's a lot of work that goes behind it. Brett works tirelessly with those hand sliders. Let's thank that gentleman. Thank you, sir, for your service. We always forget that exclusive here, right? Anyway, Nick's going to come up here and handle this. So relax and have some fun.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown at 8:30 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday night at 7 p.m. to 7:30. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Yes, sir. What's up, Tom? Welcome. Okay, man.
Ryan, alcoholic.
Hey, Ryan, welcome.
Alcoholic.
Hey, Bill, welcome. Okay, man. What's up, Mike? Welcome. Yes, sir.
I am Brett, alcoholic.
Hey, Brett, welcome.
My name is John, alcoholic.
Hey, Joe.
Brandon, alcoholic.
Welcome. What's up, man?
Hello, I'm Christian. I'm an addict.
What's up, Christian? Welcome. All right. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. Excellent. Are there any announcements for the floor for the good of AA? Yes, you.
My name is Heather. I'm an alcoholic. ECPA, which is the Eastern Area Conference of Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous, coming to New Jersey, is held the first weekend of March. It's going to be held at the Valley Casino. So the room block is completely sold out. We sold out twice now, but we're still selling pre-registrations, and it's going to be an awesome weekend. As Ron says, an epic weekend. So if you have any questions, you want to know more about it, you want to get involved, sign up to volunteer, anything like that, just come see me, have a meeting.
Thanks. Okay. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see myself or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big book and CDs to those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, please see myself or any home group member after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And I believe I have Alex to read the preamble.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politic, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have Joe to come up here and read the 12 steps of recovery.
name's Joe. The 12 steps of AA recovery. 1, we admitted we were all powerless over alcohol, that our lives become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued taking a personal inventory when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for a knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry His message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. That's it.
We have a 7th tradition which states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. Once again, there is absolutely no smoking on church property. At this moment, please take a moment to silence your cell phone, limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And I left my phone over there with the... Definitely an alcoholic. Okay. Which leads me to our speaker. A good friend of the Conscious Contact speaker group comes to us on loan from There Is More to Life group from Mechanicsburg, PA. Please welcome Brian D.
Hi, everybody. I'm an alcoholic, and my name is Brian. It's good to be here sober tonight. My sobriety date is June 27th of 1984. I am a member of the There's More to Life group. We'd love to have you if you're ever out our way. I have a sponsor. I sponsor a lot of guys. They sponsor people who sponsor people. And, I've really had that life-transforming experience that Alcoholics Anonymous offers to alcoholics through the practice of a 12 steps, what as a shorthand we describe as a spiritual awakening, the result of which has been that the life I live now is not the life I was otherwise doomed to live. And it's funny, I don't think about that like all the time, but when I think about, and it happens to me sometimes when I speak, when I think about what my life really looked like, and I've been in AA a long time, so I'm working with new guys all the time. And people whose lives haven't been transformed yet, it is such a miracle to me that I ended up where I ended up. Because of all the things that were on my, this is what's going to happen in my life, 2 that were not on them were, number 1, being an alcoholic, and number 2, being a sober one. And so, and actually, at one point in my life, being an alcoholic seemed a little better than being a sober one. And so, so what I'll try to do tonight is talk a bit about that, that transformation. The big book uses the description of what the stories in the back are, and they are always about how people develop a relationship with a power greater than themselves, sufficient to relieve them of their alcoholism, however they understand that power. And so that's hopefully what I'll be able to do. And we talk about doing that as, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And so I tend to start all over the place. So I know people always say start at the beginning, but that's probably far too linear for the way I move. But what I think about sometimes, and I was thinking about it on the way over here, just this, I was in college at the time. and I was drinking. That was my major. I sort of, was majoring in drinking. I was minoring in girls. Unfortunately, my major got to be so demanding I had to drop the minor. And there was this woman I was friends with, and it was sort of almost an unlikely friendship. Her name still is, Brooke. And she was, smart and beautiful and really engaged. What we called a BP, or one of the beautiful people. And I know this is hard to believe. I was not one of the beautiful people. And so, and I was just crazy about her. And I thought, no chance, but this would be perfect for me. And one night, the only problem is that she actually has to participate. It's like all of my relationships, that the problem is that there's somebody else involved. But it was one night she calls me and said, "Would you be my date to this dance?" And I'm like, yes! I am the man. But the problem is this, that it wasn't like, "Would you be my date?" Yes, and now we're at the dance. There was time between that and the start of the dance, which gave me time to think. And so it's like, I think she really likes me. She doesn't like you. Why would she possibly? Oh my God, there must be some guy there she's trying to make jealous. This is just so she can go, and then he'll realize what he lost, and then she's going to leave you there. No, she really wants you. And that, and that's sort of like the whole thing. And so by the time we go, I am just completely wound up. And I get there, we walk in, first thing, sort of the solution to all alcoholics' problems, open bar. So I think, all right, well, this is good. Go get a drink, drinking, it was some vodka it started as vodka with some mixture anyway. And then it's just drink and dancing, and then there's like drinking, and then it's fuzzy, and then she's dancing, and I'm not, and I'm at the bar, and I remember that, and my drink was empty, and the bartender was at the other end of the bar. And I thought, well, why do I need to bother him? So I reached over, and there was a clear bottle, and I grabbed it, and I poured it, filled it, thinking it was vodka, and I slammed it, and it was gin. Right, exactly. And I'm standing there, and I have this bottle in my hand, and this now half-drunk cup of gin. And because it was very classy, it was like 8-ounce plastic cups. We were, we didn't drink from Dixie cups, believe you. We moved up to plastic. And I said to the bartender, "Hey, where's the vodka?" And he said, "You drank it all." But here's the problem. And I didn't understand this at all at the time. That what was happening to me in that moment was not that I liked vodka. It was not that I thought it was a good idea to keep drinking. It was that because I have alcoholism, I was in the midst of a physical craving that I didn't understand. And I could not stop. So I'm standing there. I have the gin. I hate gin. I cannot stand the way it tastes. I assume I still can't stand the way it tastes. I couldn't stand the way it tasted then. I did a lot of stupid, irresponsible stuff drunk. But with gin, I made my normal, stupid, irresponsible self look like totally right down the center of the road. The guy you'd bring home to mother. Because for some reason, gin just put me over the top. But there I am. So I have two choices. I can put this down and say, "Oh, sorry, I don't drink this," or not. But I have alcoholism, so I only have one choice. Boom. And I keep drinking the gin. And then, the night ends up, I end up drinking with her brother all night. Who the hell knows what happened to Brooke? But it was not a relationship after that. And that, in hindsight, when I could look at that, what I could see was the pattern of all of my drinking. That one of the things that became clear to me after I got sober was that idea that alcoholics and non-alcoholics sort of hit problems in different ways, and that non-alcoholics tend to change their behavior to meet their goals, and alcoholics change their goals to meet their behavior. And that is exactly what happened to me. If I wanted something and I couldn't have it and drink, then I wanted something less. And it's just like, and if you watch people, I mean, we watch ourselves, but one of the gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous is sticking around watching people and getting to see them do it, to learn from it, and hopefully help them out of it, is that we make the decision to live diminished lives over and over. And if I can't have this, I can't have that job and drink, then I won't take it. Won't take the relationship, won't take the education, whatever it is, it's just chip, 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 chip. Until everything that God has given me, I've given back. And I couldn't see that at all. Because because of what we refer to as denial. Denial is far more than just, I think I can drink successfully. Denial is an entire way of looking at our lives. And that does not go away just because we stop drinking. And if we're not engaged, at least my experience is if I'm not engaged in the process here, I will do that same thing sober. And I will live this diminished life where I don't actually take what's being offered to me. And I will then mask it with the alcoholic's constant companions of self-pity and resentment. And I don't want that. I don't want that life. It's available. It's not hard to get. And I really don't want that. So I kept drinking after that for a little while, and everything fell apart very quickly. I didn't. When I came into AA, I always felt like my drinking story was not interesting enough. Because all these people be like, I've been drinking longer than you've been alive. Married 17 times, and I just didn't have that. And of course, being newly sober, I'm thinking, well, I don't drink now. Where are my 17 wives coming from? But what ended up happening is I went to a small college in New Hampshire. Actually, I went to the same college as Dr. Bob, and we drank with the same results. And the college had, at that point, gotten this sort of new program, really getting focused on alcoholism. And there was a new woman who was a counselor, and a friend of mine went to the dean of students, not the academic dean, the problem student dean, and he knew exactly who I was. The academic dean was unfamiliar with me, but the problem student dean knew who I was, where I lived, and what my class schedule looked like, and where I would not be found. And she went to this guy and said, I'm afraid I think Brian's going to drink himself to death. And if you had asked me in that moment, how are things going? I would have said, okay, I'm basically one Hail Mary pass away from success. It's just right around the corner. If just this stuff happens, I'll be okay. And in my head, what I would think is, if really the whole universe could stop for about 5 days, and I could just catch up, and then we could start again, and that reset, and I'd be okay. But it just never stopped. And so I went to this dean, and he said, it didn't occur to me to go to him, he called me in. And he said, friends come, blah, blah. You can do what you want, you don't have to do this, but I've made an appointment for you with this drug and alcohol counselor if you want to go this afternoon. Now that's what he said, and he's trying to help me. What I heard was, look, Brian, can you do a favor for me? There's this woman, she has time this afternoon. We hired her, we pay her salary. Can you go and spend time with her, and I'll owe you one? And so I thought, well, I'm already in trouble with this guy, so that's not a bad idea. So I went, I started to go to counseling, and I got exactly what you get out of counseling when you don't participate, lie, and have zero interest in benefiting from it. Because I didn't go to figure out what my problem was. I knew what my problem was. It was everybody else. I wasn't born rich enough. My family was this. People were on my back. Nobody understood me. You know, if I could just get a break, I'd be fine. So I didn't need a counselor to tell me that. And I didn't want to get better. So nothing happened. And then everything just kept getting worse. I mean, it just kept getting worse. And the drinking was increasing, and I have those nights. I remember drinking one night, and it had to be like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I've been drinking for 8 or 9 hours, and I wasn't drunk, and I had this like just terrible feeling that this doesn't work anymore. And I don't know when I thought it had worked, but it just wasn't, and it was really scary. Now, most things today in my life, if I say that doesn't work anymore, I'll do something else. I did not do that. Of course, I doubled down, and doubled down on the failing strategy, like the story of many failed businesses. And so it was the story of what I was doing as well. And so end of the semester comes, I am going to be expelled, and I know it. And the reason is I will be expelled is because I had failed a class the prior semester because one of the requirements is that you go and turn in the work, 2 of them, and I hadn't done either of those, so that was a problem. Now I had this other class, and I had gone the first day, but it met at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So I had never gone back ever again after the first day. I hadn't shown up for the exams, I hadn't done any of the work, I hadn't bought the book. I knew it was called environmental science. That was sort of the full extent of my connection with it. And something said in me, this is related to your drinking. And as crazy as it is, I hadn't really seen that before. But it was like, I think there's something. So I go back to the dean, and I said, I think there's something wrong with me. And this is where I am. And he said, tell you what I'll do. I'll break every rule we have. I'll get you out of this class so you don't get expelled, and you have to go to rehab. Now, I had alcoholic desperation, so what's my answer? Yes, done. And that's Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, I'm not expelled anymore. I'm fine, but I got to go to rehab. I'd never heard the phrase rehab before, but I got to go. Then it's Saturday, and he said something. And then by Sunday afternoon, see, I have that alcoholic ego that rebuilds itself, that I could be lying in my own vomit in the lawn on Saturday morning, but by Sunday night, I'm king of the world again. And so by Monday, he's like, okay, so where are we? I'm like, I'm busy, I don't have insurance, I just can't, we can help you with the insurance, I can't fit it in. But I'm good now. You really helped me. So thank you. 2 weeks later, I was back in school. I was living in a second-story corner room, and there were 2 windows in our room. One led out onto a sun deck, and we used to get on the sun deck. You'd sort of crawl out head first and drink on the sun deck. So one led onto a sun deck, and one did not. And in a blackout, I crawled through the wrong window. And I fell 2 stories head first into a concrete window well. I fractured my skull. I did all kinds of, I have still things, I have parts of my face I still can't feel. I get double vision all the time. I had back issues, all kinds of stuff that you drop somebody 20 feet onto concrete, bad stuff happens. It happened to me. I survived perhaps because I was so drunk. I probably just didn't tense up because I didn't even know what was happening. And so, but I was unconscious for a while, predicted to die, lots of other bad predictions about what my life would look like. And I came out of it. And after a week or so, I regained consciousness. And the dean visited me. He was less interested in negotiating at this point. And he said, if you ever want to come back here, you will do a few things, one of which was go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And now I knew Alcoholics Anonymous existed. I'm from a large Irish Catholic family. You know, it's like, you know about the IRA, you know about AA, you don't know anybody who admits they're in it, but you know some of them are. And so, you know, it's just that sort of world. So, so I knew this existed, didn't know anything about it. And so he said some other stuff I had to do, so I did that other stuff, but I didn't go to AA. And then like 3 months later, basically called up and I said, and I wasn't drinking, and I said, yeah, I haven't had a drink since I fell out of the window, and I'm ready to come back. And he said, did you go to AA? And I said, well, no, but, you know, here we go. And he said, no, you're never coming back here unless you do that. And I will tell you, that was what a bottom felt like. You know, a lot of times we talk about bottoms and we think about things like the falling out of the window or the 12th DUI or whatever it is. But the bottom really in some ways is that moment at which the last thing I lost or the next thing I'm about to lose, I can see it, and it's enough to make me do something differently. It's enough to make me try something different. It's enough to say, maybe this isn't working. And that's what it was for me. It's different for different people. And I thought, I don't want to lose this. So I will go to AA. I did not go to AA to get sober. I did not know you did not drink in Alcoholics Anonymous. That detail had escaped me. And some of it's probably culture. I mean, at that time it was just less, it just wasn't so much part of the popular conversation. And so, I mean, I'd never heard the phrase 12-step program. I didn't know anything about it. So, went to my first AA meeting, and I was predictably late because I was trying to time it that I wouldn't actually have to talk to anyone. I mistimed it, so I came in, then I couldn't find it, you know, and I was downstairs. So I run into this guy, and he shows me where it is. So we go down, sit down in the meeting, and now I know who's going to be there, of course. It is going to be A, all men, B, all guys in long coats, beards, not by fashion choice, not a hipster beard, but a sort of just, I don't have anything to shave my face with beard, and hats. I don't really know what they're going to talk about. And it's not entirely clear to me how they get from the bridge to this suburban church. But that's what it's going to be. And I mean, I knew that in my bones. So I go and I sit down in this room and I look around. It is people who look just like you. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in the wrong room. And this woman is sharing and she says something about God. And I'm like, oh no, I'm in a church meeting. And so I'm thinking, when she finishes, I'm going to slide out and then figure out where the alcoholics are. She finishes, and this woman starts right after, this woman who could have been my grandmother, says, my name's Helen and I'm an alcoholic. And I'll tell you, I remember that like it was just happened this morning. It was like, oh my God, really? And then she said my sobriety date was in November of 1964. And the reason I remember that is because I was born in September of 1964. And I had never heard the phrase sobriety date before. You know, I mean, as we joke, it's like the guys I drank with, we didn't say, you know, what's your sobriety date? Tomorrow. But it was just, but when she said that, I knew she was saying that she had not had a drink almost my entire life. And it seemed undesirable and probably not true. But then it's going around the room and, oh yeah, you know, 1971, best thing to come out of the Nixon administration. Oh my God. Came around to this one woman, Ray, and Ray said, my sobriety date is in May of 1982, except I had a beer like last month. And I was like, thank God, finally, some honesty here. You know, I wonder what Ray has. But people were talking about stuff, and this is what I could hear. People were talking about feeling the way that I felt. And then they were talking about steps and God and all that other stuff. I mean, that was like, sort of like Charlie Brown's teacher. But I could hear them talking about how they had felt, and I could hear that they were on the other side of it. First off, I had never, ever been in a room where people talked about how they felt. We didn't, I mean, my family, we didn't talk about how we felt. My friends didn't talk about how we felt. he wouldn't have even known how we felt. Mad in my family. How do you feel? Mad, unless I'm full of rage or depressed. But it was, but this, and it was sort of attractive, but the not drinking part was not really attractive. And people gave me a lot of great suggestions, and they said, you should get a sponsor. That struck me as another adult on my back, which I did. I was 19 when I got sober. So that just struck me as some other person on my back, so I didn't think I needed that. They said, you should work the steps with that sponsor. And I thought, I mean, I get why you old people need that, 30 and above. But for somebody like me, I mean, I don't need that. You should go to a meeting every day. And it was like, I'm sorry, I have hours of sitting isolated in my room filled with resentment and self-loathing and bitterness to occupy my days. I don't really need to come here. And then there was, you should read the literature, and I actually did that. But I read the literature the way you read the literature, the way I went to counseling at first. I did it for another reason, to say I did it. So when someone said, did you read it? Yes, I did. And like going to a counselor and lying, reading the literature just for the point of whipping through it, you pick up a few things, but not the consistency of what the program is going to be. They said you should probably stay out of relationships, which that just struck me as totally insane. I thought they were, this? Really? I thought it was, they were envious. They were like all old and basically dead, and so they. Whereas I could just, had this string of what I eventually learned. I developed a name to my Switter, which was my sickest woman in the room radar, and it was sort of like boom, that's it. And the women who were drawn to me, they had Smitter, the sickest man in the room radar, and we would meet, and it's like, yes, this is it. UAA people are always talking about God. Why would God have put her on this bus if we weren't supposed to be together? They tell me that, right? And so that's how I approached Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't drink, and here's what happens. Since I did not really understand my problem, I really thought my problem was I need the right relationship, and I would have said the right job, but what I really meant was the right source of income. Ideally, one that had high income, low effort, and a relationship sort of high joy, low commitment, and no effort, and then I would have thought I would be fine. Because I didn't know what my problem was, I didn't understand the solution, and I didn't want to hear it. And I got worse. Untreated alcoholism, even when we are not drinking, is a progressive illness that gets worse, and I got worse. And so I would hear people in Alcoholics Anonymous talking about being happy, joyous, and free, and I understood all of those three words, what they meant, basically, and I had none of them. I was filled with rage. I mean, alternating between paralyzing depression and murderous rage. And the only way I could describe it is I would sit in a meeting and someone would say, I am so happy to be sober. And I would think, I would like to come over there and kill you, but I'm far too depressed to get out of this chair. And I didn't, I would even feel like, I wish they would drink. And then I would think, no, that's sort of, maybe that's what Catholics would call the unforgivable sin, the wishing somebody to drink. So I don't want them to drink, I just want them to suffer and be unhappy. They can do it sober, just like me. And if we do that, what ends up happening? The Big Book has all these talks about places where we talk about the jumping off point or the turning point. We get to that place, and I got to that place. And the place I got to was, I was going to, kill myself, which I thought about all the time. B, drink, which I thought about all the time. Or C, jump into this. There wasn't a D. And I think, in hindsight, often God's grace becomes apparent. but in the moment, it just seems like random stuff that's happening. And what happened is in relatively short order, 3 things happened that really sort of pulled me into AA. The first was that, and each of them was about one of those, the trigger for each of them, the catalyst was a failed relationship. And relationship, I should really, I mean, let me just, so it's clear. What I called relationship was sort of lowercase r relationship. 72 hours was basically the whole life, like a 36-hour half-life. And, and they all kind of look the same. You meet them, you're really excited. It's like this, boom, 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 and then it's sort of, and then it's like, I'm sorry, what is her name again? And then it's over, and that's, it was ridiculous. And then the next one would come, and I'd leap right into learning nothing from what was happening. And I had a sponsor at one point who kept talking about the wreckage of my present, and I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. I knew I'd heard that phrase wreckage, but I didn't know what it meant. So 3 things happened. One of those relationships failed. I went to a meeting, and I went to the meeting intent on doing something I had never done before, which was to sit in a meeting and say, I'm not getting this. Because when people said, how are you doing? I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. Like what a friend of mine calls, the Heisman. I'm fine. I don't understand why nobody's close to me. That was the message I would send. I'm fine. Don't get close to me. And I went to this meeting and I was going to say, I'm not fine. Like I'm terrible. And so I go to the meeting. It's a beginner meeting, usually like 30 people there. There's coffee, cake, the whole thing. Coffee's there, the cake's there, everything's set up. There's not a single other person at the meeting. Somebody had come set up the meeting and left, and no one else showed up. And never happened before. It's meeting time. I'm there alone. And I thought, this is just typical of my life. Like every time I'm ready, it's just like gets yanked out right from under me. So I'm ready to leave, and this guy, Tom, comes in and he says, where is everybody? And I'm thinking, like, how would I know? You're the member. But basically I said, I don't know. And he said, why don't we have a meeting ourselves? And I thought, loser. Terrible idea. And if I had been the more sober person, I would have said, oh, I'm sorry no one's here, is what I was thinking in my head at the time. But I gotta go, And so I stayed, and he said, what's going on? And it just all started to come out. I was like, I'm sitting in these meetings, and all these people are saying they're happy, and I'm thinking about drinking all the time. He said, oh yeah, I remember that. I'm like, no, I don't think you do. I think about killing myself every day. Oh, killing myself. Yeah, I remember the killing myself days. I'm like, I tried to jump out of a moving car the other day because I couldn't stand sitting there anymore. It was like I just wanted to peel my skin off and step outside of myself because I couldn't stand being me anymore. And drinking used to give me that relief. And I don't have anything anymore. Oh, relief. No relief. Yep, the no relief days. And like, I'm sorry, I think about killing other people all the time. And if you say, oh, I remember that, you're like moving, rocketing to the top of this list. Oh yeah, the killing other people days. But here's what he did for me. He opened the door to AA for me, really opened it. It is an incredible gift we can give to people when we meet them where they are. And that's what sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous can offer to new ill members. And sometimes we do the opposite. We get so focused on what they should be doing, where they should be meeting us, we're squandering the gift we have. The gift God gives us is that we can meet them where they are. And that's what he did. He met me where I was. And I was not someone who wanted to be sober. I was not a shining example of anything other than what untreated alcoholism looks like. And the door opened. At the end of it, he said, you don't have to drink. I was like, wow. Actually, it never occurred to me. Because I knew I was going to drink. I knew it was going to happen. And I didn't have to. And I had this other guy, another relationship, went to one of my friends, drug dealer. I could have gone to a people in AA said stick with the winners. It wasn't clear to me who the winners were, but the drug dealers seemed among them. And so I'm with my drug dealer friend. He's like, I'm going to give you free drugs. It'll be just to make you feel better. Because it's like in AA, you go to people, you have a problem, they offer you a spiritual solution. You go to a drug dealer, offer you a problem, they offer you a pharmacological solution. I mean, people can only give you what they have. And so he starts doing what he's doing, and I'm sitting there, and I knew, for the very first time, I knew if I picked this up, everything was coming back. And I had never really known that, but in my bones, I knew if I picked this, the drinking was coming back, and I was not going to be able to stop. And all the chaos and everything else. The big book has that phrase where we talk about what the first step looks like, that we need to concede to our innermost self that we are alcoholic. And up until that time, that moment, I had not really believed that. People would say, don't play on the tracks, you get hit by the train, or, it's the first drink to get you drunk. And I'm thinking, not where I drink. But I knew what they meant. And I knew that was coming. And the scary part was, sitting there, despite the fact that I knew that if I picked this up, everything was coming back, I knew I was going to do it anyway. That's what it means to be powerless over alcohol. If it was just I have a problem once I start drinking, AA would be a half-step program. Don't drink. End. In fact, the big book says, if that was our problem, it would be sort of academic and pointless. That information, because it doesn't move us anywhere. There's no solution for that. Our real problem is that despite the fact that I know that, I'm going to do it anyway. And people had told me, the thing you need to get in Alcoholics Anonymous is a relationship with a power greater than yourself. And you need to do that through prayer. Now, prayer seemed embarrassing to me. I didn't want anybody to come in and find me on my knees, because they said I should pray on my knees. In fact, the people found me passed out on the lawn seemed just part of the terrain. But somebody could walk in and see me praying. That seemed humiliating. But they had said to me, there will come a day when no power on earth will keep you sober. That you will either have a relationship with a power greater than yourself, however you understand that, or you will not. And if you do not, you are done. And that was my moment. And I didn't have one, But the other promise in the second step of the big book is that God does not make hard terms with those who seek him. That all the stuff I thought I had to do to get to God, I just had to ask. When bidden, that experience, whatever we understand about God, and that can be very different for different people, I just needed to ask. And I closed my eyes and just said, if you don't help me, I'm done. That was my prayer. And the only way I can describe it is it was something physical happened. It was like just something was lifted up out of me. And when I opened my eyes, he might as well have had baking soda. Of course, he's looking at me. I'm apparently sitting there with my eyes closed, mumbling, and he's thinking, "What are you doing?" Drug dealers are used to that after they use their product, but not before. So I just laughed, and it was fine. And then I upped my game by getting involved with a woman in the fellowship, because that's not upping your game. Just in case you're wondering, it is just the same play over and over. But I was still so crazy that it was a disaster. But sometimes God uses our character defects to our great advantage. Mine was that I'm by nature incredibly competitive, and I don't like to lose. Now, little surprise that I have trouble in relationships when I step into them and I'm in a competition. All of them. And I didn't know that for a while. I couldn't see that until I took inventory, but that's how they all were. So I wanted to be better than she was. I didn't want to be better in the abstract. I didn't even want to be in AA, but I wanted to be a better AA member than she was. So I would ask people in my group, "What are you doing? What do you do?" Blah, blah. And they were like, do this, do this. I started working with a sponsor, not because I wanted to be sober, have a transformative spiritual experience. I really didn't. I prayed on my knees with him, the third step, not because I expected anything to happen, but because they told me something would happen. And I felt like I had to keep going. And so I did it, and stuff happened. I wrote my first inventory. Not the greatest inventory ever written in Alcoholics Anonymous, not even the best one I've ever written. But I wrote it. What mattered is what I did. Which is why, as a friend of mine said, the chapter is called Into Action, Not Into Thinking. That I'm really good about thinking about stuff. And I have that alcoholic problem, which is I am a superstar in the future. And you know, I am going to really get engaged. Like next month, I am going to go to 30 meetings, and I'm going to take on 10 new sponsees, and I'm going to write inventory, and I have a pencil, and next week I'm going to go buy paper, and then the week after that, I'm going to buy a lamp so I can sit up all night writing. But then next week I'm busy, and then the week after that I forgot, and then I don't do anything. But in the moment, I confuse that feeling of how great I'm going to be in the future with actually doing something in the present. What matters is what I do in the present. The game is today. So how am I playing today? And that's in every aspect of my life. That has to be true. And so I started to get involved in service. I hadn't been any interest in that, but I did that. I went back to college, and I threw myself into AA because I knew I was never going to make it if I didn't. And so I was going to meetings, at least one, if not two meetings every day. I started sponsoring people. I started taking on service positions, and really started to blossom in AA. And stuff started to happen. My life actually started to transform. So I moved from someone that gets, we describe in the bedevilments in the big book, of that feeling of, you're full of fear, prone to misery and depression. Yes. Unable to make a living. Yes, when you can't show up. A feeling of uselessness all the time. And I got relieved of that. I started to really participate in a way to try to be transformed. Now, I'd love to say I really approached the 6th and 7th step the first time, thinking God transformed me totally. I could say that, but I would be lying. I really approached it as God transformed me enough so I can get what I want. As a woman in my home group once said, she said, I want to appear generous, I don't want to be generous. And I thought, there I am. The 7th step in the 12 and 12 talks about how the attainment of greater humility is the principle that underlies all of our 12 steps. I wanted to appear humble, I didn't want to be humble. I wanted to appear humble so people would say, boy, isn't that Brian a humble guy? And I could get the rush out of having people think I'm humble. And we talk about the character defects. It's the 12 and 12 has that great description of the 7 deadly sins of pride, envy, lust, greed, anger, gluttony, and sloth. And approaching them, I'd say, well, sloth, get rid of that. That's just in the way. Gluttony, remove or moderate, at least. Like the occasional Ben and Jerry's would be fine, but nothing else. Envy is painful, so I don't want that. So those 3 basically go. God, all yours. Greed and pride, if you could just make them less obvious. Sort of plane them down a little. Take off the sharp edges of that, but so nobody sees it, but that I don't get left behind. Because if I don't have that, I don't have anything to motivate me. So I need those things, God. And anger, again, the sort of table flipping stuff, take that away. Unless I need it. In which case, leave it in reserve. But just, sort of not when I don't mean to do it. That kind of flip out rage, if you could do that, that would be good. Don't touch the lust, and we're good to go. Amen. And that was really what I approached this transformation as. And, it's imperfect, I get that. And so I got imperfect results, of course. You get some progress in that, and some not. But I kept getting more active. I moved after I finished college, did actually really well, went to graduate school, moved to an area where they didn't do AA the right way. Actually, I met my friend Phil there. I remember the two of us standing outside of a meeting one night saying, this is terrible. This is just awful. But he didn't have quite the commitment I did to fixing everyone, but he joined me a little bit. And so I called my sponsor back where I'd come from, and I said, I'm afraid I'm going to drink. They don't really know what AA is at all. And he said, well, if they don't know it, you should teach them. Now, he probably was kidding, but I took it as the gospel. And so I was just like, here, that's not AA, that's not. Alcoholics can pervert anything. And we can transform the gift of the steps into a weapon that is designed to protect us from our own fear, a design to make me self-reliant rather than God-reliant. And frankly, I did that for a bit, and I needed to get transformed again to be relieved of that. And at the same time, of course, carrying that message that this is actually what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. This is not a place to come and complain about your wife or your husband or your kids or your neighbor or your job or whatever. It's just not, that's not what we're here for. This is not a pressure relief valve group. This is really about being transformed. And got all these great opportunities and continued to grow. Started sponsoring a lot more people. People are drinking that I'm sponsoring them. And first I felt like I was not doing a very good job. And then got the reminder that everybody has a role in the sponsor-sponsee relationship. Both of those roles should have the same objective, which is to stay sober. But I sponsor people to keep me sober. I hope that as part of that process, they get sober either now or over time. But I do it because it is crucial to me to stay sober. I had a sponsor for the same reason. It was crucial for me to have that sponsor to stay sober, and that was, and I shouldn't mix that up. So when people I sponsored drank again, I thought I was failing. And the answer really was, no, you're doing everything you can. And I learned from all those experiences, and I probably, like probably everybody else, I probably get better at doing it over time with practice, because like most things, the more I practice, the better I get. I have a friend who says he jokes that he doesn't like to sponsor people because he always gets better at things he doesn't practice. And that's, it's the opposite is true. So, and then I had all that stuff that starts to happen. So I'm graduated, I went out into the work world. I was the perfect employee. I mean, I was the most spiritual employee ever in the history of the United States, until I got my first real full-time job. And then alcoholism leaps out, because see, those character defects and everything, we get relieved of them. It doesn't mean they don't get the opportunity to show up when a new circumstance presents itself. And it's not, sometimes we process that as, oh, I failed, because it's manifesting itself in this new circumstance. No, it's the opportunity to apply the same solution in this circumstance, so the next level of that character defect is relieved. I didn't have problems with workaholism when I didn't work. When I worked, I had them. And I had to take that to God. And be relieved of that, and be careful about it. Because it's one of those things that it can become its own form of a higher power. When I was sober about 9 years, I got married. Greatest husband ever, perhaps since Adam, until we said I do. And then there were things that I was, not as good at, and I had to get better at them. I have two kids. One who was born on my 12th anniversary, and then one who was born when I was in my 20-something anniversary. And every 11 years, whether we need one or not. And the big book talks about how the place where these principles really need to be practiced. And if you want to know how your program is, how are you living in your home? And sometimes, of course, the danger is we can use what AA offers, the ability to be really engaged in service, which the value of which cannot be underestimated, as a shield against participating at home. Because it's easier to run around and drag some new guy and say, particularly if I can say, you don't know anything, shut up, sit in the corner, than it is to sit home and maybe deal with some of the issues that go along with emotional intimacy in a family. And I needed to learn how to do that well. Because of what AA offered, I always say this is a really low standard. What I'm about to say is what you're supposed to do. I get that. So I've been married 25 years now, never cheated on my wife, never come close. 2 kids, never hit either of them, never really came close. I would have done both of those things. Drinking, and I would have done them dry, but for what AA gave me. I'd gone through all the amends, everything's feeling good, things are kicking along, kids, blah, blah, blah. And I had this one amend that felt unmade, and that was to my father. And I had tried to make a formal amend to him, and he wasn't a guy who really wanted to hear that. But now when I'd first come into Alcoholics Anonymous, people said, you're going to have to make amends to your father. And I was like, fuck. I'm sorry, I don't think you were listening when I told the story, because I had the litany. I remember my father just pounding us when we were kids, breaking my mother's arm. He'd be kicking her on the floor, and I'd be like trying to grab those big old work boots. I can see that so clearly today still, And I thought, what would I have to make amends for? I didn't do any of that. Here's what I had to make amends for. That I could see, eventually, that in the midst of all that violence and all that chaos in our house, my father desperately wanted to have relationships with his children. And he wanted them to love him and respect him. And he just wasn't capable of it. But I knew that's what he wanted. And so every chance I got, I sent a message that said, I don't love you, and I don't respect you. And the second I can get out of here, I'm gone and I'm never coming back. That's who I was. And that's what I had to make amends for. And I prayed about it, And what ended up happening was my father's from Ireland, or he's passed away now, but he was from Ireland. And there's an Irish sport called Irish football, and there's we played it growing up, and there's the Super Bowl of Irish football is played in Dublin every fall. And I'm praying and praying. It's June, and I woke up, and clear as a bell, a voice said, you need to take your father to the All-Ireland. Something he'd always wanted to do, no money, couldn't do it. And the 11th step promises that if we practice this, we will develop the gift of intuitive thought. What it means is when we develop a conscious contact with God, that means we actually have a contact, and we will be guided if we're willing to hear it. I, of course, thought, please tell me there's somebody else up there, because that sounds terrible. But I have either made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, or I have not. And if I have, then I do it, what I'm guided to do. And if I haven't, then I shouldn't pretend I have. So because I'm imperfect, I called my younger brother and I said, we have to take our father to the All-Ireland. Now, God had not mentioned my brother, but my brother said, we can't get tickets to that. He said, they're tough to get in Ireland. They're impossible to get here. And I said, I know, I'm telling you, we have to do it. So we start running around trying to find tickets. Like 3 weeks later, my brother calls me. He says, you're not going to believe this. He says, I know a guy who knows a guy who works for an ad agency in Dublin. And he has 4 tickets to the All-Ireland, and he'll sell us his tickets if we want to go. So God gave me the tickets. God gave me the money. And all I have to supply is the willingness. And that's going to be true. And I can see that all through my life. God gives me what I need. I need to be willing to do it. And so we did it. Went over. My father and I went over, went to the game, had a great time, flew back. My father talked about that weekend for the rest of his life. About how it was the greatest weekend of his life. Because and I'll tell you what had happened is that when we make amends with people, we create space for them as well to heal. Because we tend to think of amends as I'm cleaning myself up, and that's true, but we actually create space in which other people can heal as well, from what they've done sometimes. And that's what happened there. And and that transformed our relationship, and all that past stuff was gone. And my father got really ill, and I got to be there the whole time for it. And I got to be there for my mother as we went through that. And when my father died, I had a completely clean street with him. I had no regrets anymore. And because I had that transformation in my relationship with my father, it transformed my relationship with my son, who at one point was doing stuff that I thought I was going to kill him. And he wasn't doing anything other than, being 10 or something. But because that relationship was transformed, when he developed alcoholism, I was able to be there for that. And of course, what I'm thinking is, how could he get it? It's unfair, God, that he got it. After all I've done for all these other people, how could my kid get alcoholism? And the answer is, my kid got alcoholism because alcoholism runs in my family. That's why my kid got alcoholism. And what I did or didn't do was about getting me sober and transforming my life. And had to watch him suffer until the day he called and said, I think I want to go to rehab. And he's sober about 2.5 years now. And it has transformed our relationship completely. And one of the things about it is I have to remember that I'm his father, not his sponsor. Because of course, I can improve on everything he wants to do. But generally I need to live with my own Hippocratic Oath version, which is do no harm, which in AA terms is keep your mouth shut. Just listen. And so I end up now with this. So what does my life look like now? So I'm married a long time, happily married, kids, happily married, healthy, great business, lots of people that I sponsor, very active in AA, very active in my community, active in my church, active in these charities. And unchecked, I'll think, this isn't enough. I need something else. And it's when that tweaks that it's the reminder, I need to turn back to God. Because I'll forget the gift I got here. And I will end with this, because it was something that happened years ago. But it's always struck me as this sort of perfect moment in AA, for me anyway. This woman I knew was really struggling, and she went to an anniversary meeting. And there were, families, it was a big open thing, and she dealt with it the way alcoholics deal with it, which she sat in the corner by herself and cried. And this little girl came over to her and said, why are you crying? And my friend basically said, it's grown-up stuff. And the little girl said, you don't have to cry here. She said, this is a good place. They took my daddy and they made him better. And see, that's what AA did to me. It took me and it made me better. And that is a gift available for anyone who's willing to accept it. So thank you all for listening tonight, and thank you very much for having me.
Epic talk. Thanks, Brian. Let's thank him one more time again. Customary for us to form a line after and take some time to thank our speakers. They come here at their own time and expense to share their experience, strength, and hope. It's powerful. If you want to be of some service tonight, there's the schematics up on the wall. We have to leave like 5 tables with chairs around it. I don't know, this is going to be a circus. There's a ton of stuff that needs to be cleaned up if you want to get involved. Our sister group is a big book study, meets every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. at Salem UCC Church. CDs are available there too. If you want to get one from tonight, it's available free. We just go through that big book and people get to live happily ever after. Most of them that follow those directions. But anyway, we've got a nice way of closing. Please be mindful on your way out not to be messy. We'll circle up, and if you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. Probably just as important. Try to get everybody in a circle here. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. Need a bigger boat. Next week, Karen O is coming in. Always entertaining. Great speaker. We circle up. Take a moment of silence. Do with it whatever you would like. And if you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art